This was supposed to be easy. Canada was supposed to nod quietly, sign the paperwork, and move on. The F-35 deal was meant to be settled, locked in, untouchable. Instead, something very different happened. Behind closed doors, as Canada moved closer to Sweden's Gripen fighter, the Pentagon issued warnings. Not politely, not subtly, but forcefully. And then Ottawa responded. Not with hesitation, not with silence, but with a message that sent shockwaves through Washington. Because for the first time in decades, a close U.S. ally wasn't backing down. This isn't just about fighter jets. This is about control, independence, and the future of alliance politics. And tonight, we break down why the Pentagon is threatening Canada, what Washington is really afraid of, and why Canada's response may permanently change NATO air power. On paper, the Gripen deal shouldn't be controversial. The JAS-39 Gripen is a modern, NATO-compatible, combat-proven fighter. It flies missions for Sweden, Hungary, Brazil, the Czech Republic, all close Western partners. So why the panic? Because the Gripen represents something the Pentagon cannot control. Unlike the F-35, the Gripen doesn't rely on American-controlled software updates. It doesn't require U.S. approval for weapons integration. It doesn't feed operational data into U.S.-managed networks. To Washington, that independence is the problem. For decades, the U.S. has built an ecosystem where allied air forces are technically sovereign but operationally dependent. The Gripen breaks that model, and Canada choosing it would mean one thing: a major NATO country proving there is a viable alternative to American air dominance. According to multiple defense insiders, Pentagon officials didn't just express concern. They warned Canada. Warnings about interoperability, intelligence sharing, joint operations, long-term alliance cohesion. But behind those words was a much harsher message. Choose the Gripen and expect consequences. This wasn't public. It wasn't shouted from a podium. It was delivered quietly, which made it more serious. Because when Washington stops persuading and starts warning, it means persuasion has failed. This isn't about stealth. This isn't about radar. And it definitely isn't about whether the F-35 is a good aircraft. It's about precedent. If Canada, one of America's closest defense partners, can choose the Gripen, then why not Finland? Why not Norway next time? Why not future NATO entrants? The Pentagon fears a domino effect, because the Gripen offers something increasingly valuable in modern warfare: dispersed basing, road operations, lower cost per flight hour, national control over mission data. In a world of drone swarms, missile saturation, and electronic warfare, centralized air power is a liability, and Washington knows it. Canada isn't fighting wars in deserts. Canada is defending the Arctic. And the Arctic doesn't care about prestige fighters. It cares about cold starts, short runways, rapid turnaround, survivability under missile threat. The Gripen was designed for exactly this environment: dispersed bases, hidden operations, minimal logistics footprint. The F-35, by contrast, depends on long runways, advanced maintenance, continuous data links. In a high-intensity Arctic conflict, that dependency becomes a weakness. Canada knows this, and so does the Pentagon. Instead of backing down, Ottawa doubled down. Canadian officials made it clear: this was a sovereign decision. National defense needs come first. No foreign government dictates procurement choices. But the real shock came with one sentence, reportedly delivered behind closed doors: Canada will not outsource its air sovereignty. That line hit Washington like a missile, because it challenged an assumption the U.S. has relied on for decades: that allies ultimately fall in line. Canada didn't. Let's be clear. Canada isn't leaving NATO. Canada isn't turning against the US. This is not anti-American. It's post-dependency. Canada is signaling a future where alliances are partnerships, not hierarchies, where cooperation doesn't require surrendering operational control. And that message resonates far beyond Ottawa.
The Gripen is not just a fighter aircraft. It is a challenge to how modern air power is controlled. Unlike fifth-generation jets built around centralized command systems, the Gripen represents a different philosophy: distributed power, national control, and operational independence. It was designed for countries that expect their main air bases to be targeted first and plan to keep fighting anyway. The Gripen's ability to operate from roads, disperse rapidly, and turn around with minimal logistics makes it more than a platform. It's a statement that air superiority doesn't require massive infrastructure or permanent dependency on a foreign supply chain. What makes the Gripen politically dangerous is not its radar or missiles. It's who controls the aircraft once it's delivered. Nations flying Gripen retain control over software, data, weapons integration, and mission planning. That independence directly challenges the post-Cold War model, where Allied air forces rely on US-managed networks. In this sense, the Gripen has become a symbol of sovereignty, a proof that smaller or mid-sized nations can defend their airspace without surrendering strategic autonomy. Washington now faces a dilemma: push harder and risk fracturing trust, back off and risk losing influence. Meanwhile, other countries are watching closely, not what Canada buys, but how Canada resists pressure. This story was never really about the Gripen or the F-35. It was about who controls modern air power and who gets to decide how allies defend themselves. Canada's Gripen debate exposed a deeper tension inside NATO: the difference between cooperation and dependence. For decades, fighter jet programs have quietly shaped alliance behavior, tying operational decisions, data access, and long-term upgrades to a single power center. When Canada questioned that model, the reaction wasn't technical, it was political. When Canada questioned that model, the reaction wasn't technical, it was political. The warnings from Washington weren't about radar signatures or combat ranges. They were about precedent. Because if a close ally can choose independence without losing interoperability, the entire structure of influence begins to shift. What shocked Washington wasn't the aircraft, it was the refusal to fall in line. This moment signals a future where alliances are negotiated, not assumed, where sovereignty matters as much as solidarity. And that's why this debate matters far beyond Canada.